Hello guys, it's Grimner here, and today we are looking at our funky little speedy Carino boy with dual wielding swords and dealing a bunch of lightning damage. Well, let's just jump on the dummy for a second and show you kind of the progress we have made in terms of DPS. Not too bad, goes up to like 55-60 mil. I did brick my amulet, so I kind of downgraded my damage. But in general, as you can see, not too shabby. Of course, the damage goes pretty bad if you stand literally like right next to the dummy, but you're not supposed to do that. You're very mobile, so it's not really a problem. Even if boss like walks up to you, you can just bam, 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 just, you know, TP around basically. Let's go over some of the basics, how this build works. I did explain some of this on the previous video. I will go over this once again, just so all of you are informed and maybe you have not watched the previous video. So, what we got is Hammer of Embers skill, or as some people like to call it, Ho. And as it says, you slam the ground, creating a bunch of projectiles, and they will consume skills demolisher charges, causing projectiles to explode when they hit or disappear. But of course, there's a drawback that you gain only one demolisher charge every 4 seconds. So if we're not actually hitting anything, you can see that we are not getting any explosions. But we really do want to be getting that, you know, blinding light in your face. So what do we do about that? Well, we pick up Fatal Silent, which gains a Demolisher charge on critical strike. And critical strike damage set to whatever the number is on your gloves. Goes from 100 to 150. So basically we just need to make it so our crit is 100%. Crit chance, and then we will gain these demolisher charges on every hit, and we will just spam these explosions. Of course, the drawback is the low crit damage, but that's not really that big of an issue because we are still dealing good damage. Of course, there's a pretty big difference between low rolled gloves and high rolled, and even, you know, corroded ones that go up to, I think, 180%. But, you know, that's kind of the progression that you can make. You can start low for like 10 FE on these gloves and then work your way up and maybe corrode a pair of these or something, you know, and it will increase your damage quite a bit. So let's say I went for corroded ones with like 170 right now, I would already be at like 70 million DPS straight up. Next piece we really want is Everlasting Cloud, because this one gives us a bunch of dexterity. And this one as well, you can work your way up to a corroded one with like 80% dex, and that will also multiply your damage quite a bit. And of course, the next pieces are these swords that give you lightning attack damage per 12 dex. 2 of these, they're actually pretty cheap to buy. I would suggest not actually making them yourself, unless you're like me and you just want to craft everything you have, which, you know, then do that. But it's way cheaper to just buy them because these are like 200, 250 a pop, depending on the stats. I kind of biffed this one as this kind of is not recognized as an Omni mod for some reason. But yeah, whatever, there's still work. The main thing is just getting the attack speed, dex, and gear crit. And on one of them, I would suggest at least getting this culling mod, so you deal with some enemies a little bit faster. And this one is pretty much very similar, just no pen, and it has elemental damage tier 1. Outside of that, what else do we want? I go for some basic defenses. I go for some armor, some minus fizz taken, critical strike rating on the helmet, critical strike rating on the amulet, dex, all stats, of course, as much as we can get of dex, really. The good thing is, as we are using Hammer of Embers, we are actually scaling melee damage AoE damage and projectile damage. So we do have a lot of options in terms of crafting items and actually scaling our damage higher. So as you can see here, well, actually also elemental damage. So we have like 4 different ways of scaling our DPS here. And then I have some pretty decent rings. Remember, you don't need these exact pieces. Just, I craft my gear very specifically for what I am using. So, my resists are like nicely capped. And also I use poison immunity at this point because it gives us basically 20% extra physical damage mitigation. So just from this and the 2 mods on the helmet and boots, we have over 40% mitigation, which is pretty decent, so we don't get one shot by random trash. Outside of that, you can actually get this belt with this corroded mod. Then you will be doing 40% fizz mitigation just from the belt alone, which is very good. So we can get up to like 80% total mitigated physical damage. And yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay, let's go over some of the skills. Hammer of Ember, for quite a long while, you probably will need crit strike rating on your supports. I think it's actually going to be very difficult to remove this, because if we remove this, my crit goes down from 105% to like 60. So this is pretty necessary unless you get some very specific gear or maybe swap around some of the trees and passives. Instead of that, of course, we want GMP, because more projectiles is more damage and more overlaps with the monster that you're trying to hit. Mark, as per usual, one of the best supports in the game. This is just really nice, 30% more damage multiplier, basically. High voltage is still pretty good. Because of this, you can kind of ditch most of the shock nodes on your trees if you want to, because shock is not actually a big part of our damage. I will show you why we even need shock and how does it contribute, but it's not really too much of like direct shock damage. Steamroll is amazing. I don't know, I don't think you can replace Steamroll on this skill. For this specific build at least, just gives you way too much AoE and extra melee damage. So that's the main setup. Next we have our buff, which will be Bloodthirst, Extended Duration, CDR, Mania, and Pain Amp. Just a very nice buff. You can just turn this on when you start a map, or when you're like going for a boss, it will just reset itself automatically, basically. Gives us just a bunch of attack speed and stuff. Then we have, I use Blink on my spacebar just for when I get stuck, because there are some enemies that summon like walls and shit. And yeah, your Spiral Strike is not gonna get through that, so I just have Blink. Then I have my other buff, Bull's Rage, which also gives us more melee damage and more AoE. I support it with Efficient Cast, Extended Duration, Pain Amp for even more duration. And Efficient Cast also helps us reduce the life cost of this thing, because it costs life, not mana. Spiral Strike, as you already saw, insane speed, super quick. We support it with quick mobility, because this just gives us even more attack speed. Periodic Burst gives us a buff on attack speed, so you should use this kind of mid-battle with bosses and stuff, not just, as a basic movement ability. This doesn't really do much at this point, but you can stack this up because it gives you 40% evasion. And Harden is really good because it just gives us damage mitigation for free, pretty much. Then I'm using Cast on Crit with Blizzard. Why do we use Blizzard? Because enemies receive a minus 15% lightning and cold res when hit by this skill. So this is basically kind of an extra curse on this build. Electric Punishment, you don't have to use this, but it just triggers extra shocks. Not really a big deal, just a little bit of extra damage. Then we use Curse on Hit with Elemental Destruction. You can technically go for a, where is it? Nope, that's not what I wanted. Electrocute. But as long as you're not ignoring your enemy's resistances, you should not do this. You should go for Elemental Destruction. Or if you do get an amulet or something that breaks into extra curse, you can always go for both Elemental Destruction and the other one, Electrocute. Then we have Thunder Imbue. It's just a decent DPS increase, you know, nothing too crazy. There's pretty much not much else that we can put in that sealed mana. So, you know, it doesn't add too much, but it does add something, so whatever. I use Restrain to reduce some of the mana cost. And of course, Fearless for crit rating and melee area. Also, seems like not super crazy, but actually this helps us cap out the crit quite a bit. And then the last setup, of course, is our Flame Spirit and Thunder Spirit. We get a bunch of attack speed from this and a bunch of crit from this. So it also helps us out to get us a little bit more flat crit, basically. And then, of course, Magical Source. And as we are using Alchemist Tree, we want to actually level this up to give us a little bit more life regen and superpower just to buff our spirits up, because we are not actually needing them as minions, we just want their buffs. So that's about it. From there, the talent trees go as follows. I'm going for Goddess of Hunting. Mainly, we want this. It gives us 30% extra maximum damage and minus 30% extra minimum, which kind of seems like it balances itself out, but it doesn't, because all of our damage is lucky. So the minimum damage kind of takes almost no effect, but the extra maximum damage actually does help us out with more damage caused. Then of course we use Perception, also stacking dex, so we gain even more stuff from Dexterity. And the rest of the tree is as follows. You can just pause this and, you know, copy it if you want. Outside of that, there's like nothing too crazy here. Just gonna get some dex, want to get some attack speed and crit, all of that good stuff. Agility, this is also pretty okay, but I mean, we're not using evasion right now, so it's not really that big of a deal. You can actually drop this shock chance as well. I just have not really found anything else I really need too much on this. I guess I could get some attack speed. Remember that we don't need any movement speed at all, because we're using a mobility skill pretty much all throughout. Next tree is Blade Runner, mainly for this Queer Angle. Against all shocked enemies, your damage is lucky. So as I talked before, this one actually just gives us pretty much only the positive and doesn't give us the negative. I mean, it sometimes does, but on average, you mostly get only the positive. And it does increase our damage by a lot. Then I use Conductive. You can go for Static if you find yourself standing quite often. You know, maybe you don't have enough DPS early on, you can go for Static. Nothing wrong with that. This just adds us a little bit more damage. It's not too crazy. It is actually around like 5%-ish, depending on what stage you're on in the build. Might be 10%, you know, something like that. But it's still pretty okay. And the static one just, you know, gives you extra attack speed and life regain while you're sitting still. The tree looks like this. Here we do actually pick quite a few things. We get more shocks. We get some lightning piercing or crits, agility blessing per 8 attacks. It's very nice. And in general, just very nice stuff like agility stacks and extra lightning damage per dex, which is what we scale, of course. So, you know, fit the tree around what you actually want and like. You know, if you're going for more evasion, take away the max life, grab some evasion, you know, why not? And then, of course, we use Alchemist mainly just to get Source, so we get 2 free Spirit Magus. And, of course, Active Superflux, which will give us our overflow mana regen as life regen. I will show you the life regen in a second. Here we kind of want to pick as many things in the beginning as we can, because the later things in the tree don't really give us much. So, you know, just pick up the early stuff up to 36 points so you can grab Super Flux. And I can show you, I'll press my Bull's Rage, which will consume some of our life, and you can see what the region actually is. Yeah, you know, it's pretty fast. It's like 500, 600 per second, so it's pretty decent. We are still squishy though, so yeah, don't think that you're going to be tanky for now, at least. Hero traits. So we go for, of course, here we don't really have a choice. We use ammo every time that we shoot the projectiles with whatever skill. It can even be a spell. So we want to reload as many of these special, what are they called? Special ammo, yes. Basically, they will be consumed every time you attack, and they will kind of be represented with different colored circles in there. And I have put in a lightning penetration, which of course is really good, a lot of DPS. Wind projectiles, more just projectile damage, and AoE, which does help us with the overlap of the circles that we create. So they overlap more, and the enemies that are kind of in between get hit by multiple explosions. Outside of that, it's just, you know, we want as many of these slots as we can. So we take this. Here you, by default, just get them. This one you can pick up if you are not stacked out on your crit up to 100%, you know, because these are both fine. But this one is just more damage if you already have crit capped out. And then we get the basically extra damage when you're firing special ammo. This one is not really that big of a deal because we are reloading instantly. Because we gain magic shot. When we consume special ammo, we get magic shot, 20% chance. It will actually make our reloads instant, so we can attack as fast as we basically want, and we will always have full ammo reloaded. So that's pretty much all that we need there. Yeah, actually this is pretty simple. There's nothing too crazy here. Just, you know, you just get basically 3 extra supports. That's about it there. So yeah, I think actually that's pretty much it. I already kind of talked about the upgrades. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You just want better Fatal Silent, better Everlasting Cloud. There's nothing crazy there. And of course, it would be nice if you could corrode this stat, because it would give you pretty much 50% extra damage on your dex stacking. And if you want to get tankier, you can get this corroded poison immunity infinity. That will give you a little bit of extra boost in terms of your survivability. Outside of that, I think this is pretty simple. Actually, there's one more infinity you can look for. You can look for an infinity that gives you source, but those are very expensive. Some of them are not super crazy. I've seen a couple for like 400. So you can get that and you can ditch this tree. And for example, let's say if you want to get more tanky and actually get some decent damage as well, you can take Steel Vanguard, which will give you the poison immunity. And you can also take this, +3 maximum ally res and damage pierces ally res. And on top of that, you also get all of the stacks of blessings, tenacity, agility, and focus, and you also get +1 max on all of them. So that actually would be also a pretty good buff in terms of both damage and survivability. But yeah, that's going to be it from me today. I think the next build that we are going to make is probably going to be an immortal build. That's at least what I kind of want to make. So stay tuned, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.